Today's video we're going to show the steps necessary to install and configure the Impinj Speedway Revolution R420 RFID reader with one antenna hub and the capability of handling multiple antennas. So the first step to be able to do this is to review the physical components and then how to connect the components, and then the third part will be how we configure the readers for MS BizTalk RFID 2010. So on the components, the first component obviously is going to be the reader, which is the R420 reader. It is connected to it with the power. The power can be either PoE or can be on adapter, a power adapter if necessary. It's also connected to an Ethernet cable to be able to connect to our TCP/IP networks. And then we'll have a GPIO adapter, and that GPIO adapter is connected via an HD15 cable. And then attached to each of the 4 ports on the Speedway reader is the antenna hub, and that antenna hub can handle up to 8 independent antennas, and so consequently we can have up to 4 hubs connected to the same reader, and consequently up to 32 different antennas connected to the same reader. Each of these obviously is connected via a cable. The cable that connects the reader to the antenna hub is the reverse polarity TNC at the reader side and an SMA at the antenna hub side. The connector cable for the GPIO port is an HD15 cable, and then the connector from the GPIO port out to the antenna hub is a standard RJ45 Ethernet cable. Alright, now that we have the components identified, now we'll go through how to set them up. It's key whenever setting up any RFID reader is to ensure that we do not connect the power until the antennas have been installed and connected to the reader. So the first step is that we're going to connect the Ethernet cable to the reader. We're going to connect the GPIO adapter to the reader. Then we're going to connect up to 4 individual antenna ports, one to each of the antenna connectors on the back of the reader. And then we're going to connect our antennas. We can connect up to, once again, up to 8 different antennas to each antenna port, antenna hub. And then as a result of that antenna hub, we want to make sure that we install those antennas in sequence: port 1, port 2, port 3, port 4, etc. We do not have to use all the ports when we set up those for any given antenna hub. After we've set up the hubs and we've connected the hubs, we've set up the GPIO adapter. Now we're going to run an Ethernet cable from the GPIO adapter out to the antenna hub. And what's important here is to note is that on the GPIO port adapter there are 4 different Ethernet hubs or ports, and we need to make sure that we tie port 1 to, in this case, port 1 on the antenna hub, so that the antenna hub coming off the reader and the going into the antenna hub is the same as the port coming off of the GPIO reader. Once we've connected this, we have everything connected, then we can go ahead and plug the power in and power up the device. Now that we've connected all the hardware and have it set up, we need to configure Microsoft BizTalk 2010 to be able to support that device. So the first thing we need to do is make sure that the device provider is available to us, and that is LLRP. So if we right-click on Device Providers, we'll come up with LLRP. Second thing, once we confirm it's there, is we're going to go ahead and add our device. So we'll right-click on Device. We'll add a new device. We're going to add a single device. Next, we're going to select LLRP as our service provider. Then we're going to add our IP address and our port number on the firewall so that we can get our data transmitted in and out of our system. Next, we're going to define a group for putting this device, and we'll call this one the Harry Winston WIP group. And So now all of our devices will put in there. Go next. Next we're going to put our username and the password for our reader, which in this case is root and impinge. Next we're going to go ahead and identify the properties. So we're going to give a logical name to our device. So put the location and the device name. Then we'll see that everything's added. And so we'll click Finish. And now we're going to click on Device and View to verify that the reader has been set up correctly. And as you can see, we're reading all the tags that are on the reader. So we've set up our reader correctly. Okay, so now that we have our device set up and it's working correctly, we want to adjust the powers to get the appropriate transmit range for what it is. So we'll, on the device, we'll right-click on Properties. Then we'll go down and click on Custom. Now that we're on Custom, we're going to select our device and then our antenna. Since this is antenna 1 on device 1, we'll select our antenna. Then we'll go down to the Transmit Power Index, and we will change our Transmit Power Index to 18, for 18 dB to 32. And then say OK. And what we've done here is just reduce the power so that our read range is not too far, and we're reading tags well beyond where we want to read them. Once this is done, we'll say Apply, and then OK. Now we'll go in and set up a process that's going to use this device to read tags. So Process, we'll have a new process, so we'll click on New Process. We're going to give this a process name, whatever it is that you want to call it. We'll leave the tag processing mode as transactional. Put a description if you want to. Click OK. Now we're going to we'll do Next. And now we're going to identify our logical device name. So we're going to put a logical name on our device so we can refer to that in the future. And we're going to click on our device name, then say Next. And now we're going to add select the device that we want, say Next. And now we're going to add the components that we want to. So in this case, the component is a private component, meaning that it's one that we've built independently. So we're going to go out to our location for the event provided by Rfid 4U and select that. And we'll say OK. This is going to process the data as it's coming in from the RFID reader. So now we're going to click that, add that as our process. Now we have to go in and identify the database where this data is going to be stored. So we need to have the database and the logon and the password for that particular database. Say OK. And click OK. Click OK. And then we'll close. And now that then we'll say Next. And now we should start the process to verify that it's working. So click Start the Process and then Finish. And now we should be able to go out and view the tags that we're reading through that process. And so here we can see that the process is working, it's functioning correctly, and we're reading the tags that are in front of the antenna for that particular jewel or for that particular station, for that particular device.